Hey Circuit Riders, we are heading to British Columbia, but first we got to spend an overnight at a Harvest Host in Washington on the way up. So we are leaving Oregon now, and whenever you are going to a Harvest Host for a quick overnight or any boondocking spot, you need to ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, do I have power? We have all 3 of our Delta Pro towers topped up. We plugged them in so that they're ready to go. We'll have power overnight. We do have solar panels, but it's so cloudy here in the Northwest, I'm not planning on solar, so the battery towers will be fine for us. Number 2, do I have sewer? Now, of course, there's no sewer connections usually at Harvest Hosts, but our tanks are empty. Our gray and black tank are empty, so that's plenty of capacity for us to go overnight and then carry it on with us to the campground. Number 3, what's number 3? Do I have water? Because again, usually not water hookups at Harvest Host. So we have put 20 gallons of water into our fresh tank, and that'll be enough for us to take a couple of showers, run the toilet, run the sink for an overnight, and we are ready to go. We got parked here at our Harvest Host in Enumclaw, Washington, just east of Tacoma. And we had a little bit of an adventure getting in here because it's down a long dirt road, kind of a farm road. There's lots of horse farms here and other, just rural property. But the back end to the spot where they wanted us to park was very sharp, and we didn't have room to back our RV into there because we're 40 feet long, and they didn't have a suggestion for how we could turn the rig around. So we ended up going to someone else's driveway that had room down the road and did kind of a 3-point turn and got turned around and finally got backed into that space. But we did say to the host, we don't feel like this is a 40-foot Harvest Host street or location, even though our rig fits in their, in their spot. You always have to consider, can I get into the spot? Once I'm in there, it's fine, but if the turns are too sharp, if the road is too narrow, you might not be able to get into that spot. So Jason and I have been having a long conversation here about what could have gone wrong. Why did we pick this place in the first place? We're trying to remember. And when we use Harvest Host, we always filter for places that say that they can accommodate rigs of 40 feet or bigger. But we noticed that now, after we've gotten set up, we went back to look at the listing again, and now it says up to 35 feet. Now, it would be really unusual, though not impossible, for me to have booked the wrong place, right? Gone to a listing that didn't say 40 feet. Maybe I was filtered wrong. Maybe I didn't read correctly and booked the 35-foot space. But even if that was true, when the host got the request and saw our profile saying we were 40 feet long, I would have thought they would have said, oh, you're not going to fit in here. So I don't think that's what happened. We're wondering if, after we got here and the host saw how much trouble we were having parking, if they went into their Harvest Host profile and changed it to 35 feet, like today. So that's another possibility, that they've just, realized, hey, 40 feet can't fit in here. Let's go change our profile for future people. So just all told, I feel like either they're new hosts or they've never had a rig this big in here before. I don't know. It's kind of strange. Yeah. Jason says, or we're just terrible parkers, which is not off the table. So this is just a little hobby farm, but I did buy a little jar of honey so that we can support our local Harvest Hosts. Okay, we're about to cross the Canadian border into British Columbia. We're crossing at the Abbotsford crossing rather than over near Vancouver, so I think this is a much smaller crossing. Shouldn't be any problem. Jason does have the Nexus card to get him over the Canadian border. It's like a TSA pre-check for Canada, but I don't have one, so we can't go through that lane. But I have applied for one, so because we cross the border so often in Maine into Canada, we thought it'd be good for me to have one too, but I just don't have it yet.
Let me pull up here so it's kind of display set. Is that it? Measurement units. Kilometers and kilometers per liter. All right, here we go.
It's very important to Jason that the minute we cross a Canadian border, we change the truck over to kilometers per hour and miles per liter.
Very important, but I always
kilometers
forget.
per liter. All right, yeah. Oh, it's a red light. We're gonna go through it.
The yellow lights.
It was yellow. We're set up here in British Columbia, and the day after we arrived, Jason left again for a retreat that he was doing with a group of church people and colleagues here in Vancouver Islands. So I just dropped him off at the ferry terminal, and I'm heading back to the campground, but on the way, you know where I'm stopping, Bulk Barn, to get my snacks for the weekend. So I'm gonna hop in here, and then Jason said he might film some stuff while he's on retreat, so we'll see what he comes back with. Otherwise, I'm going to lay low this weekend. We have been going so hard for the past month or two up the West Coast. I really need to catch up on some sleep and just have some alone time.
So Lisa asked me to share a little bit of where we are right now. She's usually the one talking to the camera and giving the color commentary, but I do sometimes speak for a living, so it's not foreign to me. I just don't do it on this camera. Anyway, Lisa wanted me to share a little bit about some of the other benefits of doing this kind of full-time RV traveling. So right now, Lisa and I are in two different places. She's on a retreat, which means she gets to be by herself in the RV. I also am at a retreat. This one just happens to have a few dozen people at. So I, right now, am on a little island, about a 40-minute ferry ride outside of Vancouver. And so one of the benefits of full-time RVing is that it allows us to really be present in the places we travel to, which sounds a little bit funny. You know, in one sense, you're always moving around, but in another, when we're there, we get to go a little deeper. So the people I work with pastors and churches, particularly leaders who are starting new churches. A lot of history doing that in the US, and now working with folks in Canada. We just get to soak into it instead of flying in, which I certainly do a lot of, or zooming in, which I do way too much of, to really show up and be there. On this most recent trip, as we've come through Northern California, Pacific Northwest, to really be in the rhythms for a few weeks even, with friends that we hadn't seen for a while, got to reconnect with. And of course, we get to be in some really beautiful settings. Not too bad.
Just ducking out quick without Jason to get my British Columbia geocache. He said it was okay if I did it without him. I've come down to beautiful Cultus Lake. There's two right on the edge of the lake here. I'm gonna see if I can grab one. Aha. Some trackables in here, just like the ones that we have. Nice. Well, maybe I will take this trackable because we're going to be finding a lot more caches on this trip, and there should be an easy opportunity to drop it off, so I'll take this one. Wow, there are logs in here all the way back to 2010. That is really unusual. Yeah, we haven't done a travel bug for a while. This is really cute. It's got a little carved wooden fish on it. And here's the number if you want to track it. There you go. So you know how when we are on our land in northern Maine and we love to go down that road that is the border of US and Canada, that just dirt road that goes right along, and there's just a little barrier fence there, hardly anything. Well, there's a similar road here in British Columbia that I'm just driving down. Cultus Lake is very, very close to the border, so this isn't very far from our campground, but there's even less barrier here than there is in northern Maine. It's just like this kind of brambly woods. I did see a little wire fence a little ways back, but not like a real barrier or anything. And like in Maine, you know, there's farms along this road on the Canada side, and then on the Washington side, just kind of a lot of wilderness. And I guess those mountains back there are on the Washington side. Love to see it. Very cool. I did just pass by a stanchion. These look familiar because they also have these in Maine, and it says Canada, US, and curiously there's a trail going into Washington from here. Look here, you can see the border going up through the hillside. So we were real excited to come to this Cultus Lake Thousand Trails here in British Columbia because it is the only Thousand Trails in all of Canada. And I was curious about why this was. It seems really odd that there would only be one Thousand Trails in all of the country of Canada. So I did a little research, and what I found was the guy who started Thousand Trails started in the state of Washington in 1969. He had a campground there, and he, throughout the 1970s, got a bunch of other campgrounds in the Pacific Northwest to kind of band together under this Thousand Trails umbrella company. And so he added campgrounds in Washington, Oregon, Northern California, and one here in British Columbia. So that's why there's such a dense concentration of Thousand Trails here in the Pacific Northwest. If you look at the map, you know, there's a dense cluster up here. Then in 1991, another parent company bought out Thousand Trails and a bunch of other small campground associations and combined them into one, and they have grown, you know, over the past few decades. But they renamed the umbrella company Thousand Trails. So it's still called Thousand Trails today, even though it's really an amalgamation of all kinds of little campground associations that were around the US that have been brought together under this name. So it's not really connected with the original founder anymore, but because he had added that one campground up here in British Columbia, that's why it's part of the overall Thousand Trails network right now. And I guess that Thousand Trails is not interested in expanding into Canada. I've not seen anything, you know, about any other campgrounds being added from Canada. I would love it, especially in the Maritimes and Eastern Canada. I think there's great opportunities up there for campgrounds to be added. But anyway, that's what I found. About an hour north of Cultus Lake is a little town called Harrison Hot Springs. It's on Lake Harrison, and so there's a bigger lake behind me, and then also a little internal lagoon here. And there are some hot springs here in the town. One of them is indoors. We're gonna go check that out. We didn't bring any bathing suits, so I wasn't prepared to like pay for an indoor hot spring today, but we'll just walk around this cute little resort town. public mineral spring pool here in town. Looks like it costs about $16 Canadian for adults, and there's just one large pool in there, not a series of pools. There is the source of the Harrison Hot Springs is about a 15-minute hike up the lake. You can't drive there, but you could walk from here, and there's a little outdoor pool area there. I don't know if it costs to get in there, but we're not going to take the time to walk out there right now since we can't sit in the spring anyway, probably. But we're just going to keep driving, do a little scenic drive. Very cute little mountain town up here. Population of 6,600, which is a good size for just a little rural town up here in the mountains. And very nice statues on the downtown. Lots of carved wooden animals and statues. I like to see those. But we're just going to stop here for a quick Tim Hortons snack and then keep going. On the way back to our campground, we're stopping in the town of Chilliwack because they have this super cute shopping way called Thunderbird Lane. This was built this way. It's not a historical road or anything, but just wanted to walk through here in the evening before we head back home. They have done an amazing job of making this area look super old, but you can tell if you look closely that it's brand new. And it's a mix of shopping, restaurants, and also apartments in the back here. Looks like this whole complex was just finished in 2022.